Welcome to Profiles in Eccentricity, a show about weirdos. With your hosts, John Fahey, Aaron Peter, and Matt Brousseau.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Profiles in Eccentricity. It's a show about weirdos, doggone it. My name is Johnboy. I am your host, John Francis Fahey. The name is Boy. Johnboy. Joining me as ever is the pinnacle and perfection of perversion, Michelangelo's David Duke.
Take a Duke?
Take a
David Duke.
Take a Duke on me.
Michelangelo's David Duke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great.
Coveney. David Duchovny. Aaron Joseph Pete, how are you?
I am, I'm here.
Good. God. It's great when you can be here.
And, I'll be here until further notice.
That's a strong statement.
Good. Great.
So, get used to it. Now, to my right
My left.
is Noma the Submariner. Because you're from Massachusetts.
Noma?
Yeah, Noma the Submariner.
Oh, that's good.
I'd like to see that.
Noma.
Noma the Submariner.
You didn't say his name. It's
Matt Brousseau.
Matt
Oh, hi.
Brousseau.
Yeah, hi.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
You like Nomar Garcia Parra?
Hey, he was fun.
He's a good player, huh?
Yeah, he had a pretty good run.
Yeah.
And then he married Mia Hamm. Also,
That's right.
Also a pretty good run.
Also a great athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who any of these people are.
Nomar Garcia Parra.
He was on the Red Sox when they were losing all of their rivalry games to the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last season he was with the Red Sox, he didn't play much, and they won the World Series.
Yeah.
Out of sight.
But yeah.
And then he married Mia Hamm of the women's Olympic soccer team.
Yes.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, arguably America's greatest soccer player ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, shit.
What about Alexi Lawless?
He was fine.
Alexi?
It's the only one I got.
Fair.
So we didn't have an episode last week, I don't think, because Matt was out of town. We might not have one next week because Aaron's out of town.
But we're knocking them out for you here, right now.
No, we're trying to bang them out, baby.
Watching the world wake up from history.
I
Just burp on the mic.
I what?
Sorry.
I wanted to talk to you boys about George Orwell.
I'm familiar with the gentleman.
The G-Man.
It is the only author I've read everything by. Everything.
Even the one where he talks about how much he loves his wife's farts.
That's James Joyce.
I'm
I think there's diaries that are available, but not to
It's the man's diaries, dude. Don't read
a lowly pleb like me. Yeah, some biographers, they do that shit.
See, the diaries that don't go by diaries by George Orwell.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the shit I never thought anybody would read.
I don't know. I think it's.
I think back then it was like for posterity.
It was kind of, yeah.
Like, dear diary.
And a lot of it was.
Dear me.
Dear the rats.
A big love of ornithology and stuff like that. That stuff would be in the diaries.
Oh,
Like,
that's fun.
Just as much stuff. A guy that grew up English countryside. What he deemed to be lower upper class.
It was his
family. Yeah, like by the time he came around, like his grandfather, I think, had owned slaves in Jamaica, but that money wasn't really there anymore. And the public schools are the ones you want to go to, and at that time, and private schools are like kind of all you can afford.
Where was he born and raised?
He was actually born in India. But I think he moved back from there with his sister when he was just a year old.
But it was part of the Commonwealth.
Yes, and his dad was, in the opium department.
Hey,
actually,
that's a good department to be in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some people are in, like, artillery.
I didn't really know about all that, which is that basically it was, like, under fire because they were like, hey, this shit's out of control. And then it was, like, shut it down. And then the British were like, well, we'll regulate it.
Right.
So you know what that means. Like, we'll make sure we get paid.
Yeah, we'll take our cut. These are cut of the chop.
And there was, like, the opium wars with China and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
Using that as a weapon.
And how does that fit with it? Like this? Is that before the Secret Wars? Is that?
Yeah. In between Secret Wars 1 and 2, there was the Opium Wars, where just like everybody in the whole Marvel universe was just lying on their side.
Yeah, cool.
In Chinatown.
Cool.
Shang-Chi was running shit.
Yeah, his dad was well, first of all, his name is Eric Blair. It is not George Orwell. George was chosen because the patron saint of England, and Orwell was just a river where he enjoyed fishing.
Huh.
Neat. I have to think also it could be something along, because his favorite author as a child was H.G. Wells. And which made so much sense to me later. I was like, of course, because he doesn't go hard sci-fi. But
it is kind of Elseworld stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
And definitely some horror.
He's got fucking talking animals, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. And I think shortly before, well, we'll get into that later. But yeah, so he ate up, the time traveler, especially from Wells.
From the Time Machine.
The Time Machine, excuse me, from H.G. Wells. And
I mean, the time traveler was in Time Machine.
Yeah.
Like that, you love his wife.
So yeah, he grows up, very much, a kid out in the woods playing around. He's got a couple close friends. He's a little bit of a weirdo. Spends a lot of time alone. There was a neighboring family called the Buddicomms out in just rural English, like nice home out in the middle of nowhere. And there's just he grew up shooting rabbits. He would breed caterpillars. He was into birds and flora, fauna, like just really into nature type kid. Fishing, and just enjoying that like English countryside,
pastoral lifestyle.
And so I think in the first 12 years, like it's like occasionally he sees his dad when he comes home from working in India, but he's pushed really hard schooling, and he's got to get into a good school, but he is really smart, and he works really hard, and he kind of gets to the first private boarding school, and he kind of sees like immediately like stepping out of line, like him and the kids that are there because they're smart to make the school look good, not because they have rich parents. They get hit. And the rich kid's parents get like come on now, boy, we don't want to be doing that. Maybe a tap of the pencil and that sort of thing isn't on now.
His father pulls a lot of weight around here.
Don't want to be one of those boys.
Yeah, but they would fucking get their asses handed to them. You know what I mean? Like it's always great when the hitting the child implement breaks.
Oh yeah, that only makes them angrier.
Just to really show how hard they're actually hitting these children. So yeah, he had stuff like that, and came up and like I said, like he has like this neighboring family, kind of like you had growing up, where like he likes the sister, but he's friends with the brothers and like all that sort of thing. That's the Buddicomms. And Jacinta Buddicom, she was the one that was like, she's like, I came upon him and he was standing on his head. And she goes, she said, why are you upside down? And he goes, people tend to notice you more.
Oh.
So, a little bit of an odd boy. Something of an odd chap, I'd say.
Yes,
I'd say it was working, yes, Jacinta? Yes.
Hit him with the ruler.
And so, he's kind of got like, one of those like house, keeper type
servants.
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of like
servants.
Yeah, but also what would I say, like an au pair kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But so yeah, he comes from this kind of like like I said, lower upper class. Like they've got money, but not sort of really. And you can kind of see how that's sort of weird, that it's sort of pretending, and then that they still belong to this class, but they just barely do. So he sees some hypocrisy and silliness in that. He sees like the hypocrisy and silliness in the way the kids are treated at that private boarding school. And then he goes to Eton Eaton.
Eaton. I believe.
Eaton, is it? Yes.
Is it Eton?
Yes.
Okay. I could be wrong though.
And you know, he's been writing like poetry since he's like 5 or 6. Like he's into writing right away. He kind of knew right off the bat I'm going to be a writer, you know. But he's, you know, he's got to you know, go through with everything, and you know,
It's got to have some shit to write about.
Yeah. And you can't just be standing on your head all
Yeah,
day.
you can't just be writing about fucking caterpillars.
Yeah.
right. And
I guess you could.
I mean, if you're a caterpillar.
his mom was like a pretty socialite, so she was like often gone too. So I think it was like, you know, a fend for yourself kind of household for these kids. And
Did he have siblings, you say?
yes, he had a sister 5 years younger, and I think one, oh shit, she might have been as much as 5 years older. Yeah.
The middle child. Always the
Yes.
one who acts out.
The younger one was
attention.
her name was Avril. I don't remember the name of the older one as much. He seems to be eventually closer with Avril. But yeah, he's you know, he kind of likes this girl Jacinta that he grows up next to, and he was remarked to be an unattractive child. So I think during his adolescence he maybe had some clumsy come-ons to the close girls, and they were like, no thanks, but they always still wanted to know him and be friends with him, and that seems to be like a thing that would kind of keep throughout, because they were like, well, he was always very interesting. When he gets to Eton, everybody said he clearly thought for himself. He argued about everything, and he seemed to win them all. But he was definitely not going with the flow sort of thing. I think after, you know, the first private school thing, and then he was just kind of disillusioned. So then he just spoke up more. And, you know, he's, you know, got this I think during his time there, he's able to avoid the First World War, right? He's just sort of in school then. And, you know, he's coming out of it, and he decides he wants, you know, he's got some, you know, because of his family system, some romantic idea of colonial India. So he decides to go. And that is definitely the beginning of the shattering of illusions.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't really go away.
Yeah, it seems like it's a good age to you're kind of open to that.
Yeah, it's also your early 20s.
Yeah,
like you're gonna be like, what the fuck? It's all bullshit.
Yeah,
you know, like of course you are.
Yeah.
You know,
Time to become a nihilist.
But he said he's on the ship there. On the ship, the petty officers who he said he looked up to as godlike beings. He said he saw one of them like stealing half a custard off like the civilians' table and scouring away like a rat to eat it, and he realized like, oh God, like all this sort of pomp and circumstance, and this guy is starving.
Yeah, this guy can't wait to get his hands on some
Yeah.
custard, half-eaten custard.
Yeah, and, you know, the godlike being, it turns out, can't afford to eat, and so then he's kind of like, oh, something's wrong with the way everything's presented,
Yeah.
right? And so then, you know, he's doing the you know the policing in Burma, and he has a thing like where
When you say he's doing the policing in Burma, he signed up for like some kind of job?
Yeah, and he had, you know, family ties through
Right.
through their history there, so he's able to get a job fairly easily, and he's a young man, but immediately he sees that the class of the imperial police are very much racist.
Yeah.
Look down on the natives, and so he goes and he'll attend like native religious ceremonies, and like he doesn't stay in like the clubhouses with the fucking who he deems to be the snobs, and he immediately decides like imperialism is fucked. Like this shit is fucked up.
And I'm sure they didn't like him.
Oh yes, he was very much odd man out.
Yeah.
And so I think when he wrote Burmese Days, he's always vaguely the main character in all of his books.
Right.
In this one, he gives himself a huge birthmark on the middle of his face. But yeah, it's just a guy that's like disillusioned with his time, you know, seeing that it's all bullshit. And the novel was just a way for him to, you know, write out everything that he saw that was wrong and how it was all bullshit, and the hypocrisies of the classes, and all of that just starts coming into laser focus for him. And it seems like that is sort of the mainstay of his work. At least in novel format, is just not even really in some of the nonfiction stuff too, but just like pretense and appearance of class, with no wealth behind it, especially, and the carrying on as if you're better than others when.
And then how that's exploited by people in power.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry. Did you was there anything when he was a kid? You know, what were some of his, other than H.G. Wells? Do you know, was any other?
He. I honestly know more of his contemporaries that he enjoyed, because that's a great generation of writers too.
Okay.
But yeah, when it's his generation later, it's like Steinbeck, and for a time he was actually taught French by Aldous Huxley.
Oh wow.
And Brave New World came out in 1932. Don't forget.
And everybody always kind of lumps together 1984 and Brave New World together.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, sister books.
Yeah.
Which is totally reasonable. Very different dystopias on display.
Yes.
But both definitely cautionary tales and both great reads.
Yeah. I mean, there's no avoiding Dickens.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, right.
Dickens, he wrote, some incredibly beautiful things about later, because it's wild. Like later in life, he sustained a lot of stuff. Even as he was getting famous, more writing work came in because he was getting famous. So he kept writing. And a lot of that was just reviewing books.
Oh, interesting.
And so, he gets to review his contemporaries' books and his friends, and then talk about some of the greats and stuff. So you get to hear a lot about his literature takes.
Okay.
One thing I don't think that survives, which is a bummer, which I would like to double check if it's, I don't know if we can, but is that no recording of him survives.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of baffling because
yes,
he was doing BBC dispatches for India during the Second World War for 2 years. Like there's pictures of him with BBC microphones and stuff.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. But so yeah, he had a thing in Burma once where an elephant got loose, and it trashed a marketplace. And all the locals were just shouting for him to kill it. And so he talks about killing the elephant just because he felt like he had to, stuff like that. He talks about the crime of someone getting hanged, and he just has a very, very bad takeaway from the way these people are interfering in these people's lives. So he comes home. I believe. He comes home, I believe, after maybe serving 5 years.
In Burma.
And he's also begun writing, the Burmese Days and
Burmese Days. Yeah.
That was 1927. He's coming home writing Burmese Days, and he leaves on the mustache, which was British soldiers often had the mustache.
Yes, sure.
And he came home and he just stays kind of quiet at his parents' house, which is in Southwold. And he was considered by his friends at that time to be a small C conservative anarchist, because he still retained, in his social circles, the arguing about everything kind of thing, And it was a thing where, he was a little bit of a small group of friends type of guy, a big, group didn't really do that for him. But he kept, he was a lively dinner guest, was kind of the thing,
Yeah, I mean, an anarchist would be.
And probably would avoid large groups.
Well, and the reason they said Tory, small C conservative, was because he still had just a great love of things British.
Right? Yes, yeah.
Oh,
okay. But low taxes, but burn down the government. Because they can't charge taxes when they're burned down.
Well, it's a funny thing, too, because, he becomes so, against industry and things like that. That you like, it's the thing where you go conservative. You know, it's like a thing where you go like later on. You know, he'll retire just to like a Scottish Isle where like he's like if you're coming here like we're eating what's off the island.
I hope you like caterpillar stew.
Or it's like it's shot rabbit and you know, maybe some spinach if we got it in the garden, you know, like
who's to say?
And so then he would do the beginnings of you know, he would go out to the rougher parts of London alone. And people would notice the Eton accent. And they'd be like, oh, what's his problem, mate? You know? And,
Hey, bruv.
yeah. And, but it was like the beginning of his immersion into the poor classes, which he really wanted to get into. And so, yeah, he started going native in England. And there were other journalists that had kind of done this before, but he was the one that in what would later he would later do The Road to Wigan Pier, that was focusing on the North, the coal mines, all that shit, how people lived there, how the wages were, all that sort of stuff. But what he's doing now is the beginnings of what's going to be down and out in Paris and London.
Yes, okay, yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned Dickens, and you know, Dickens did a tour of the U.S. where he basically kind of did something like that too.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, there seems to be like that was a one thing an author could do it at the time, and still today, I suppose.
Yeah.
It was especially for the English. Staying with your class was so de rigueur that it was like
that's French. But
people would be like, "What the fuck? What?"
Well, no wonder they fucking loved having a stranglehold on India.
yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah,
Or the caste system, like these savages, I say they've got one thing right. Everybody stays in the station.
Well, it's a thing here where he goes headlong into that in this thing where he goes and I think he has an aunt over there on his mother's side. His mother was French. His aunt is Nelly Limousine.
This is my limousine?
Yeah.
this is your aunt.
And I think he was staying with her, and he went back, and all of his money had been stolen out of his flat. And then he just got a job washing dishes in a Paris hotel, a Parisian hotel. And then he saw how bad that is. He goes, that was the one job where it was every race of Earth, right? The plongeurs. And it's a luxury hotel. And first of all, you find out how fucking disgusting everything is in a luxury hotel because the humans are treated like worse than animals.
You mean the staff, or do you mean
staff?
Yeah.
And the divisions among the staff in class are equally as just baffling and sort of like deliberately. Giving you better station than you really have against others, like a very real divide and conquer,
right?
Which he lays out very, very well. And of course, he's just kind of going like, "Well, this is all fucking bullshit," you know. He's told when he shows up that he has to shave off his mustache. Only chefs are allowed to have mustaches. Just little,
that's how you know
little poxy bullshit like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's the maitre d' telling him.
The maitre d's probably have a thinner mustache.
Yeah, they have that little
pencil.
The pencil thing.
So this thing, he goes, the highest is the maitre d'. He did not serve at the table, but directed the other waiters and helped with the catering. He was in a position quite apart from the rest of the staff and took his meals in a private room. Next, the head cook drew about 5,000 francs a month. He dined in the kitchen, but at a separate table, and one of the apprentice cooks waited on him. Then came the chef de personnel. He drew only 1,500 francs a month, but he wore a black coat and did no manual work.
Good deal.
It is an instructive sight to see a waiter going into a hotel dining room. All in the dirt and hurry and irritation have dropped off in an instant. He glides over the carpet with a solemn priest-like air. The waiter's outlook is quite different. His skill is chiefly in being servile. His work gives him the mentality of a snob. He lives perpetually in sight of rich people. The result is that the waiter comes to identify himself to some extent with his employers.
Right.
Also maids, laundrywomen, cafe managers, cellarmen, bellhops, warehouse clerks, porters, ice cream vendors, bakers, night watchman, doorkeeper. The plongeurs were of every race in Europe. We of the cafeteria were very dregs of the hotel. We were stuck down in the kitchens where there reigned a nauseating stench of swill and sweat. Everywhere in the cupboards were squalid stores of food that the waiters had stolen. It was nothing unusual for a waiter to wash his face in the water which clean crockery was rinsing.
Oh, Christ.
In the dining room sat
Probably
the customers
more,
in all their splendor, spotless tablecloths, bowls of flowers, mirrors, and gilt cornices, and painted cherubim.
I had no idea that they got Francois' ball sweat all over their cutlery.
Yeah, exactly. Francois.
Dude,
Come on,
Francois?
man.
Good old Francois.
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 So then he goes back to London, and he just still doesn't have a pot to piss in. And he gets taken in.
The pissed in the sink.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, that's where you learn something.
He starts going to the what do they call these? The DOS houses on the outskirts of London.
How do you spell DOS?
DOSS. They call them spikes too.
Sounds hot. It's like a BDSM club.
He goes, this one's it's just a boarding house.
Oh, okay.
He goes, this one's obsessed with smallpox. So you see them all there naked. And he goes, what are these blue spots, doctor? And he goes, malnutrition, nothing contagious.
Yes, the malnutrition's not
And then he
contagious, I
takes
guess.
him to another and goes, the tea's good here. And he goes, but they have to save your soul before they give it to you.
Oh.
So it's a hour-long sermon.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dispossessed.
for Christ's sake. Give me a Catholic wedding.
And he goes, and the guy taking him around is Patty, and Patty's telling him, he goes, no need for bleeding prayer, but a tea and 2 slices will cost you 4 pence. And so he just goes around and he sees how everybody's doing it, and he's he's like the smell.
Yeah.
Is the one thing you really got to get used to, and they get worse in different places.
Yeah.
Disinfectant, and then just unwashed feet. Like a house with like 1 million people. And he talks very frankly about it, and he's doing it for obviously the classes that don't know about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
And so then he kind of just walks back into upper society, right? And he decides, I'm going to become a writer. And he's like, I've got a bunch of experience to draw on, And he goes, this guy is like, I got some, tutoring work for you, tutoring kids. And he goes, kids, should we say, that are a bit backward?
Oh.
Right? And
they're a bit much.
Yes.
and he goes, and I've got some friends that have liked the pieces I've sent them that you've written.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, oh my God, really? And he goes, and he's actually, they want you to come by their offices and show them a few more. And then he's like fucking like elated, And so he goes to this place called the Adelphi, and that is very much a kind of a early socialist kind of leftist labor sort of deal. And
is that the name? It's like from the Oracle, perhaps. Or how's it spelled? Adelphi.
Adelphi.
Okay.
So he's like they're like, what do you got coming up? And he goes like, I'm about to go hop picking in Kent. And that was the thing, like the East End poor would all go in droves and pick fucking hops for beer.
No shit.
In Kent, like en masse. And it was just like a thing where it's like, go there, save up a bunch of money, bring it back to London. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'm going to do that with them, And one of the women in the office says, but they say you'll have to sleep in a and the guy says, very interesting, the editor, and the woman says, but they say you'll have to sleep in a tent with foul-mouthed cockneys and dangerous gypsies. And Orwell goes, well, that's what's so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm counting on it.
Why are their mouths so foul?
And so this is then the basis for Clergyman's Daughter. And that's, I think, the only time he has a female protagonist, which again is still pretty much him. Might be married a little bit with an actual clergyman's daughter that he had a thing for.
The character's him, but it has awesome tits.
Yeah. But But yeah, she's also like a school teacher, like which is like his tutoring thing, you know. And
Write what you know, man.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's great too because like he's doing that. He's doing the hot picking journalism thing, right? He's tutoring the kids in school, and then he's also working in a bookshop. And the bookshop is the basis then for Keep the Aspidistra Flying, which is my favorite book by him. And it's a thing where, like, you know, based on some favors, he's you know, he can stay with the family in their like one of their houses and work in the bookshop at night. And you know, it's just like he's not grown up poor. And he's choosing to kind of be poor, and he's kind of being a piss pants about it.
Is there still family money that he could conceivably draw off of, or
There's certainly, first of all, just connections that he could draw from.
Matt?
Connections.
Probably some white pants out there somewhere.
I think it's very much his choice.
Right. He's choosing not to make a few calls.
Yeah, but also like there's a thing there where, you know, sometimes when you would do that stuff, like, you know, the going native, like the native, like he didn't fit in with them either.
Right.
It was good if he could get like a one-on-one thing going because, like I said, that's how he did best. But he didn't fit too well with
Groups.
the lush society either, or the, you know, the kind of affluence either. So basically, it was like if you were kind of a literary person and definitely left-leaning, that would kind of be the thing that, you know, that would really make him kind of go to you. And he sort of needed to be met on some sort of an intellectual level. And you can imagine when someone's so like hyper-aware of hypocrisy, you know, a lot of people are going to fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But so yeah, I really got to say I do love that book. It's told Richard Park. I was like, dude, you know, it's my favorite. And Richard Park pointed out the similarity in all that one to me with Animal Farm in 1984. The only other two he had read, which will come later, obviously in his career. But he was just like, and I'm gonna spoil for you, sorry, but basically like, there's a sellout at the end from every one of the protagonists in some way. You know, for noble or not reasons is sort of up to you, or if it's just utter defeat.
Right.
But the one in Keep the Aspidistra Flying, I think, is a little bit more opaque. It's kind of like, you know, who saved who kind of thing, or who sold who out. But it's just a guy that's like, either I'm going to make money being a poet, or I'm going to be dirt poor because I want anything than to be middle class.
Right.
You know, and the aspidistra is a houseplant that he sees as the flag
Of the
middle class.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, I either want it to be like, you know, but
I'm not settling for middle of the road.
yes, but he also knows what a burden he is because he is a brat.
Yeah.
Because he's borrowing money from his sister. His girlfriend doesn't want to have sex with him until they're married. So he's just like, and at the beginning of it, it's wonderful. He takes love and replaces it with money in the wedding thing. And though I could move mountains and I have not money, I am nothing.
Yeah. In his vows.
In his vows, he changed. Yeah, it's that opens that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh fuck, that's so fucking brilliant. And there's a beautiful scene where he's got his girlfriend out for a date, and they've been walking for so long, and they're just so far from anything in this park, and eventually they just come upon one of these fancy hotels, and he's looking at the menu, and he knows he's got no fucking money. And the waiter comes out and he's like, oh, what can I get for you, sir? And they're like, oh, waters. You know, he's like, at once, sir. And have you looked over the menu? And they're going like, oh, we'll have the bread. And he's like, bread. Like, you can just tell they're poor.
Yeah.
And there's just
excellent choice. The bread is fantastic.
Men like you, I know.
Yes.
Yes.
An English staple, sir.
Yes.
Bread.
Now, would you like any water with the bread or separate? How would you like it?
Off the floor, for you, sir.
Man like you probably turn the water into wine. Is it?
A plate of water?
But it's a brilliant back and forth, and the misery of it it was just, it's one of those ones that really sticks with you. And the book is made into a movie. In this country, it's the only time it doesn't have the title "Keep That Aspidistra Flying." It's called A Merry War, but it's great because it's William Grant and Helena Bonham Carter doing the scene. And it's just my dad saw it without having read the book, and he's like, man, I saw this fucking William, because me and my dad both loved William Grant.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about it, and I was like, that's fucking Keep the Aspidistra Flying.
Right.
And I looked it up, and it's an adaptation of it. But yeah, if you've only read Animal Farm in 1984, I cannot recommend Keep the Aspidistra. Like I said, I've read all of the shit. I would say it's, for me, 1984, Keep the Aspidistra Flying, Animal Farm, Homage to Catalonia, and Down and Out in Paris and London would be the top 5 nonfiction and fiction. But yeah, so all of these things are happening at once, and he's throwing them all into different books, which is fucking great. And it also goes because he's getting denied in the book, and his manuscripts for these books, like Burmese, they're all getting denied. So it's like it's while he's staying in those kinds of boarding rooms, working in a bookstore. And there's people that already out there that already do believe in his talent, obviously, because they've passed on his stuff.
Right.
But he just keeps sending the same manuscript to the same publishers, and eventually he gets a guy that is, kind of a socialist sort of type, starting his own publishing house, and he starts putting out his shit. And he was a little bit of a disguise guy, when he was doing these things.
Orwell?
Orwell.
Like he'd wear one outfit to the
Like different looks, always like variations.
Oh, dude, like Patches Malone.
Well, like the guy, like where you got to be a bum, right?
Yeah.
You have to be, you're down and out in Paris and London, and then like,
dude, that is so funny.
yeah. He was, and he would use different aliases in the mall, and at this time he's going like, which one of these should be my pen name?
Right.
And he didn't like his name specifically Eric because of some book, the titular character in some book that's a kid that sucked named Eric. And it was
South Park.
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
The book of South.
So in the end, it ended on George Orwell.
Un nom de plume.
And he's kind of getting notoriety now for doing this immersive reporting. And there's people out there that are like noticing his shit, and
this is getting published in like periodicals.
In periodicals, yeah.
So he is making a bit of a living, or he's making some money, he is writing.
Yes. And that's the funny thing too, is that in Keep the Aspidistra Flying, he talks about like his wealthy anarchist friend that has a magazine, and you're like, oh, which one of these guys is this? And you're like, I'm pretty sure now that I've read the story of George Orwell, I know which one it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing that people had a hard time getting around, was the line, the lower classes smell. And he was just going like, that's what it is, man. And people were like, just didn't want to hear it, like from the rich side and like the socialist side.
Right.
But then there was, of course, some thirst for some people that were just like, tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
You know?
You can't deny the reality of the thing, too. Oh, it might hurt their feelings. That
No,
they're
man,
like,
the system sucks. There's no, like, what did you expect?
Yeah. And now he's becoming, the Tory has been dropped. He's becoming more socialist. He's against the industrialization, the mechanization, urbanization, all that shit that he sees as things that will kind of destroy England, which I think was happening globally, right?
Yeah, but England was, at this point, England already led the way with the industrial, revolution and mechanization. What are we in the 30s now?
Yeah.
So exactly. that's already happened, but the rest of the world is catching up and getting there. And yeah, it's dehumanizing, right? And you were able to just kind of not only replace workers with machines, you then start to see workers as cogs in the machine, and it is dehumanizing. So
yeah.
I see where he's coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some stuff where, he just, the observations are so keen sometimes, where he talks about, like when he was in boarding school as like a little kid, and he was like, this woman that would hit me, she took me to the headmaster, and she's like, look at this kid, he wets the bed. And he goes, then, I was told basically the headmaster, would beat me the next day if I wet the bed again. And he goes on the whole tirade about how the difference of how the upper class kids were treated or the rich kids were treated. And then he goes, and that's all there is to say about it except one thing. I did not wet the bed again. So he's kind of going like, yeah, this whole fucking thing is really fucked up, but here's an additional piece of information.
It worked for me.
That's undeniable. Right. Same sort of thing when he talks about the bourgeois socialists, right? Where he says, look at Comrade X, member of the CPGB and author of Marxism for Infants. I have known numbers of bourgeois socialists. I have listened by the hour to their tirades against their own class, and yet never, not even once, have I met one who had picked up proletarian table manners. Like, these people, they're not going to start spitting like they do in China. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, spitting. Spitting was encouraged after Mao.
Yeah.
Everybody spits.
They still do.
And no, now they're fighting against it. They're going like, hey, the spitting's got to stop.
on,
like,
please.
we have COVID and shit now.
Yeah, you go to Singapore, they'll fucking beat you with a bamboo rod if you spit on the ground.
But some people enjoy that sort of thing.
In the face?
Yeah, he's taking on some of these ideas too of like the working class being happiest, because like they can have a job and they're not as burdened by the upper classes with worries of class sort of thing.
Yeah, and the burden of having time to contemplate your own existence.
Yeah,
you know, dogs are happy because they don't know they're gonna die. They're just being dogs.
Right.
Yeah, and they on the classes always romanticize each other. Mm-hmm. The grass is always greener as far as the classes go. But, you know, the true to form with Orwell, like, because he came from that kind of lower upper, he had the luxury of, you know, dipping his toe in that, whereas it doesn't work the other way around. 99.9% of the time, those from the lower class aren't able to just dip their toe in the upper class for shits and giggles.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I don't know how much money was really left. So I do think it was sort of up to him, and I think he had pretty much taken the choice, and he did really kind of just make it.
Right? Oh, I'm aware of that, but
it didn't.
It doesn't work the other way around. Is what I'm saying. Is that those who are in the lower class don't have the ability to just make that choice.
I do still think he could have like run back to his sister or mom or whatever
and asked.
Yeah. But yeah, he's he's getting rejected by all these publishing houses, but he's still got the one socialist guy that will put out his articles and stuff like that. And there's a great thing where, a friend of his is talking about all the things he hates. And he's talking about, like, I hate London. He's like, all the bourgeois types and their trivial concerns. He goes, I hate labor politicians. They become capitalist lackeys without even realizing it. He goes, I hate as much the black shirt fascists of Oswald Mosley. You know Oswald? Mm-mm. Oswald was the, like, from a lord's house British guy that was the biggest ally of fascism in Europe. And it's really funny too, because like he had this huge thing during the War of Independence with Ireland where he was like out saying how cruel the black and tans were to the Irish people, demanding investigations into it and stuff. So, when they're the British thugs on Irish soil, he's like, this is a crime. But when they're fucking in black shirts on the streets of London, sig heiling, he's got no fucking problem with it a few years later. And I followed his just because I was like, who is this fucking guy? When you go on the separate rabbit hole. And I was like, oh yeah, he's probably worth a look. Yeah. Imagine thinking for a second in Britain, like, oh yeah, this is like, we're going to get behind this. Yeah. Like the king is a fascist.
Yeah, that's
right. Like
just fancy your clothes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he started what ultimately became the British Fascist Party. The black shirts were, in Ireland it was the blue shirts. Hitler had the brown shirts. He went to some of Oswald's speeches and stuff. Orwell. And he was going, it's always these mysterious Jews that are doing everything. Yeah. And he's like, if you ask a question that mostly struggles to answer, he's like, you'll be fined and beaten. He goes, but the people I hate most of all are all those drunken Scots ruling all over the colonial empire. And he goes, let me stop you there. Your anti-Scots obsession verges on madness. And he goes, you're right. We all have our contradictions. He goes, I also adore cats. I adore birds, but I hate cats chasing birds.
That's something that fucking Orson Welles would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love cats. I love birds. I hate cats chasing birds.
Kill them.
And these mysterious Jews.
Logjam. You're beating.
These scouts presiding over the empire, fat and winded. No underwear under those kilts. You know that, Logjam?
You know how I know that?
They're muffin tops.
It's 1910.
Scottish Highlands. I got an eyeful, let me tell you, friend.
I was doing a play there.
You ever see William Wallace bend over to pick up a golf ball? Staring into the eye of Sauron is what it is.
Drill hole in two.
I'll tell you, it's not just his face that's painted blue. So yeah, he ends up through a friend of a friend, getting introduced to this woman, Eileen O'Shaughnessy. Oh, and
O'Shag Hennessy?
O'Shaughnessy. Yeah.
O'Shag Hennessy?
Yeah.
And this is through the socialist paper, the Adelphi he's writing for. And
No, man, I think Adelphi means brotherhood. Delphi is the oracle at a place called Delphi.
Right.
But Adelphi, I think, is Greek.
That would be a good name for that sort of newspaper.
Right.
And so they have this conversation where she's going like, I'm close to Independent Labor, which is a separate party. And he's like, that's good. He's like, they're a small party, but they're not towing the line. They're saying, and she goes, I hate the aristocrats running the country. And he goes, yeah, you're right. They're profiteering and they're fucking impotent and they suck. And she's like, I hate Hitler and his henchmen. And he's like, yeah. He's like, this is a danger English people are not woken up to yet. And she's like, above all, I detest Stalin and the Soviets. And he's like, yeah. He goes, they're another kind of danger.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's, like, they're just, like, bam, like, right on speed. Like, she's, I guess, from some kind of stock where there's, like, horse riding and stuff,
Oh.
And how'd you feel about those dirty Scotsmen?
I'm sure they probably got a lot of mileage out of that.
Cats, birds.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they were to have what was considered a equally matched and happy marriage. I think maybe they both cheated on each other a little bit, and there was some heartache. But for the most part, they were a real unit. And they get a house. And there's no electricity and everything. He fixes it up. He gets chickens. He gets goats.
Nice.
He loves breeding animals and stuff.
It's a real animal farm.
Yeah.
It is. There's an outhouse and shit.
Oh.
But
cool.
he's like looking forward to like touching it all up and everything. And plants rose bushes and shit.
I love that.
You
Take pride in your.
He's got geese. Redoes the roof. And
Really makes a house out of a home or a home out of a house. I can't remember.
Turns this house into a home.
There we go. Great.
Real bless this mess type of situation.
Yeah. Bless this goose.
And then he goes, I'm going to join the Spanish Civil War, Daddy.
Well, he finished the house. What's left?
This is boring.
Yeah.
Boring.
They said they had like just like a wonderful year there. And then he was just like,
I gotta go.
he's like, I gotta go do this. And then she's like, all right, well, I'm going to meet you there. And,
so this is 36.
yeah, and I thought he went to write. He never went to write.
He went to just fight on the side of really. So the Spanish Civil War was like 36 to 39. It was the nationalists and the Republicans.
Well, that's a bit too simple.
I mean, but there were also other factions. There was like the anarchists, and then there were socialists, but like the Spanish Civil War was really like a proxy war for all the competing ideologies of the world. There were Americans that like Hemingway went there, right? Hemingway fought in the Spanish Civil War.
Irish on both sides.
Yeah, everybody kind of went there. It's kind of like this weird Ukraine thing going. Like it was this battleground of ideas as well as a battleground of battle. And he fought on the side of the anarchists?
No, actually, that was kind of the thing I thought, and he fell in love with what was going on in Catalonia, and everybody was just saying salute instead of buenos dias, and he said the barber and the guy sweeping up, everybody was equal, and he just saw, he wrote about it in Homage to Catalonia, and he talked about fighting with the what was it, the IPOUM, I believe. So the anarchists would have been the CNT. But then there was also another socialist faction that was more of a straight from Stalin communism kind of thing.
Stalin or like Leninism? Like straight up Stalinist.
Yeah, like they had it's really funny because the special branch in the UK, because of this immersive journalism that was like seen as fomenting the working classes against the ruling classes, the special branch was investigating him. It wouldn't stop until a year before he died in the UK. And once he started making waves in Spain, Stalin started watching him for years.
So no wonder he was fucking paranoid and wrote 1984.
Yeah. But so, it was just like a different socialist faction that he was fighting with, and it was not like a really busy one, but he was also trained as a policeman, and he's like, oh my god, the soldiers are like kids.
Yeah, and they let me wear a mustache whenever I want.
Yeah. They have no munitions or whatever, and he's tall too, right? So like in the trenches, they're like, dude, you better get the fuck down, homie.
Yeah.
And
he fought in Catalonia. That's the area that he found like the most like kindred spirits in. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so like Catalonia, like they're a part of Spain where they really don't even identify as Spanish. They don't speak the same language.
Correct.
They kind of have their own thing going. They keep trying to secede.
Yeah,
they don't like being part of a group.
Well,
except their own group.
Yes.
Let me find exactly what the difference is here between the three, because it does matter insofar as what kind of made him disillusioned with the whole thing. I was supposed to say, like, he was kind of prone to getting sick. He got sick like in 1929. He's also always smoking cigarettes too, right?
Yeah, as they all were.
He had fucking TB, and he was asking the nurse for a cigarette and stuff later.
Washing his face in the ball water and
eating the bread and a steady diet of bread and water.
Yeah.
Toenail fungus. We had blue spot. Everybody was just so malnourished. They hadn't enriched wheat yet, so everybody had like rickets.
Yeah, and the healthiest thing they were doing was smoking cigarettes
and drinking tea.
Yeah,
like the tea kept people alive. Like it honestly it still does.
Antioxidants.
Yeah. For Americans, their biggest source of antioxidants still is coffee. For the Commonwealth places, it's tea. Like that's the biggest source of antioxidants for those Western countries still.
So yeah, he had an independent Labor Party contact to get an introduction to John McNair in Barcelona. And he met Henry Miller in Paris on the way there.
Oh, nice.
Henry Miller was like, "You're a fucking idiot."
I'm just gonna write about being in Paris.
Henry Miller wrote like Tropica, all the tropics, Tropic Cancer, Tropic Capricorn. Those books got like banned. He almost went to. I think he went to jail for them.
Yeah, he was real nasty, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean,
for the time.
Yeah, for the time, it was real nasty.
So yeah, he meets McNair in Barcelona. He says, Orwell quoted him as saying, I've come to fight against fascism. He said later, if somebody asked me what I was fighting for, I would have said common decency. And that kind of shows you like what he thinks eventually of all the other political riffraff that he was fighting alongside. So the Workers' Party of Marxist Unification was the POUM. And the Anarcho-Syndicalist Confederation Nacional de Trabajo was the United Socialist Party of Catalonia. And the United Socialist Party of Catalonia, which is a wing of the Spanish Communist Party and was backed by the Soviet arms and aid. So this is what happens: is he's with the Workers' Party of Marxist Unification, fighting alongside them, seeing the good work the anarchists are doing. He is then told that there's some fat Russian back in Barcelona just spreading lies and saying that the POUM is collaborating with the fascists. And he's like, my friends are dying on the front lines against the fascists. Like, this is bullshit. And they're all like, it's all like, Stalin is kind of like conferring with the West and doesn't really want this to work so much.
Right.
Like, he's fine if it works, but he's more about continuing the purges against other types of Leninism and stuff. Like they said, the POUM was doing a Trotskyist a coup attempt, and George Orwell was quoted as saying, "These kids don't know who Leon Trotsky is."
Right. I gotta write a book about animals to show them who this kid is.
Yeah. So yeah, he was on the front. He was like fucking 1,500 feet above sea level in the middle of winter. He said there was very little munitions, food, and some international labor party contingent. Some British came, and so then they were sent on to Huesca, Huesca, city in northeastern Spain. It's still Aragon.
Yeah.
So, and then Eileen visits. She brings him English chocolate, tea, cigars, all that stuff.
No fucking vitamin D or nothing like that.
So then he has a poisoned hand somehow. And he comes back. Most of his possessions are stolen by the staff. He goes back to the front. And then they did a night attack on the fascists, and he blew up a enemy rifle position. Yeah, and he said then I chased some guy with a bayonet and he got away. But I think that was the extent of the action he really saw. Except he went back. He went back to Barcelona, and he wanted to go to the Madrid front, and he said he was told, you must join the International Column, and he went to the communists and explained his case, and he said he didn't think much of the communists, privately, but he was still ready to treat them as allies. And Orwell got caught up with the Barcelona May Days, which was factional fighting, and basically, there was just that's when all the fucking lies went out about the POUM, and he was told to keep his head down and, told by his wife, get the fuck out of the country. Just get out. Don't even go to a hotel. They're watching everywhere.
Yeah.
So he slept in the streets and then, got on a train.
Yeah, it's so amazing how, in that era, 20s, 30s, and then obviously the 40s and later, but, the network of secret police and spies and informants that authoritarians could put together like that it's mind-boggling. Even in Spain and Portugal, the network. I mean, of course, Soviet Russia.
You think the time it would take to court them and get them along?
No, just here's 3 squares and we won't kill your kids.
Yeah, dude.
And the approval of the group, right? Dude, just hundreds of thousands of informants and spies in just the Iberian Peninsula.
So at 6'2", he did take a bullet to the throat.
They were aiming. They were trained to shoot at a certain height to get headshots.
Yes, that's right. No, they said really at sunset, the sun being behind you, it's all you see is silhouettes. So it's the easiest. And they kept telling him
get down, goon,
the tallest one here.
Well, it's a good thing he wasn't 2 inches shorter.
Yeah.
He wouldn't get any Tinder matches. But yeah, he got one, and he couldn't talk, and his blood pouring out of his mouth, and
Jesus Christ.
They put him on a stretcher, and they got him on LLEIDA. Don't know. There was a hospital there. And he was good. He was good enough to get up and around by 27th of May, and he was sent to Tarragona. And 2 days later, to a POUM sanatorium on the suburbs of Barcelona. And the bullet had missed his main artery by the barest margin. It was such a clean shot that it cauterized itself.
Nice, God.
And
it's like a lightsaber.
And then he was just declared unfit for service. Right. And so, it's just all this, POUM propaganda was it took off a POUM mask and revealed a swastika underneath. All this shit went up, and it was just fucking, divide and conquer completely for Franco, or Stalin, which, And so, yeah, they escaped by train, and they went back to England. He arrived back at Wallington, and a deposition was presented to the Tribunal for Espionage and High Treason in Valencia, charging the Orwells with rabid Trotskyism.
Rabid.
And being agents of the POUM. The trial of the leaders of the POUM and end of Orwell in his absence took place in Barcelona in October and November. Observing events from French Morocco, Orwell wrote that they were only a byproduct of the Russian Trotskyist trials, and from the start, every kind of lie, including flagrant absurdities, has been circulated in the communist press. Orwell's experience in Spanish Civil War gave rise to homage to Colonia, but it also just created everything he thought about politics forevermore after.
Yeah.
Where he was just like,
It's all bullshit.
it's all bullshit, you know?
And it's all, and the people paying the price are the young and the uneducated and the poor
And the
the
tall.
desperate.
Yes. and just the needless thing of who are you with?
Yeah.
And what does it matter?
Right.
What are you fighting for?
Yeah.
Common decency.
Right.
That's, it's the only thing, like, it's funny because it's like, it becomes a trope of like, the hero that's just a good guy in
Right.
movies.
Yeah.
But it's a thing where you should go like,
I know bad. Like,
Yeah.
I know I can fight against. I know, sometimes it's more important to know what you're against than what you're for.
right.
And so that's why that trope works so often.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially for the lone hero.
Yeah.
Everybody can identify with him.
Yeah.
Because he's the good guy.
Yeah. Because he's at least not bad.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
The Gray Man out on Netflix, starring Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling. Check it out by the Russo brothers.
Yeah. He the trip to Monaco too was also financed anonymously by some other novelist that was like a contemporary of his at the time.
Our friend of the show, Ryan Kohler, is in Monaco right now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, just
Very
posted some
nice.
pictures at Monte Carlo Casino, etc.
Oh, very nice. Let's take a quick break.
Sure.
Be right back, folks. And we're back. So the Orwells go back to Wallington, which said the place is in a shambles.
Disarray?
Yeah,
The servants. Sorry. Go
they
ahead.
didn't have any. The geese weren't taking care of the
The
place.
servants in Catalonia stole his stuff for Argot.
No. That was they stole his stuff over there.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
just like the house had just kind of fallen to
Sure,
shit.
but didn't have a man to.
Geese
an Orwell.
Or a woman. They both were there. But I want to say before moving on from the Spanish thing, two things. One was he, while having an okay relationship with rats down and out in London, the rats, the multitudes of them in the trenches led to a lifelong fear of rats. And
Which has no significance to anything he would write later.
yes, absolutely not. And also, when there was kind of the purge coming down on the POUM, and not long after they started, the communists were arresting them, they started shooting them. And their friend from the Independent Labor Connection was a guy named George Kopp, and they did risk their cover by trying to save him. Both of them. She was very, very, very lockstep with him. Super brave. Very politically motivated. He comes back. He starts fixing up the place. He gets a little poodle. He calls it Marx. And
For Richard Marx.
he gets a rooster that he calls Henry Ford. And he's just starts breeding animals and writing homage to Catalonia. And his health was kind of going downhill, and he was thought to be having TB, and there's Warburg, this guy Frederick Warburg. He became his publisher, and How Much Catalonia was pushed out. He would be his publisher until the end. And
Warburg.
yes,
Just can't get away from.
Frederick Warburg, very interesting. He did not only all of the Orwell stuff and close personal friendship with Orwell. He also published Mein Kampf. I don't know if that was later, But the publishing house, and he also did the decline and fall of the Third Reich,
Wow.
or the rise and fall of the Third Reich, I believe it is.
Real bookend.
The rise and
Probably
fall, I
Rise and
believe.
Fall, yeah.
Real bookend series of that.
But the publishing house was noted for being as anti-Soviet as it was anti-fascist. That was just. So I don't know if it was like a thing where
Hey, if it sells, it sells.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a publishing house, it's good to have things you're against.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Orwell says, I think at the beginning of one of the books, like liberty means nothing if not telling somebody something they don't want to hear. So I think it can be like a thing of like
Probably 1984.
no, I think it's a more like a more nonfiction work or an essay work. But
1984 is if you want an image of the future, imagine or visualize a boot stepping on a face forever.
Right, yeah. He goes and he goes to Morocco, Marrakech, and they have a villa on the road to Casablanca, and there he writes "Coming Up for Air," which is about an Englishman feeling like war is coming and returning to his old place where he grew up, which is like in the English countryside. So it's full of a lot of humor and stuff. It's definitely his most English of novels. And then he did that Dickens essay. In 1939, his father dies. His father's name is Richard Blair. And at the outbreak of the Second World War, Eileen is working in the Ministry of Information in central London. And staying with her family in Greenwich. And Orwell submits his name to the Central Registrar for War Work. And they won't have me in the army at any rate at present because of my lungs. He returned to Wallington in the late 1939. He wrote the material for his first collection of essays, Inside the Whale. For the next year, he's writing reviews for plays, films, and books for the listener. New Adelphi, Time and Tide. In 1940, his association with the Tribune began with the review of a sergeant's account of Napoleon's retreat from Moscow. Beginning of 40, his friend Connolly, he starts a magazine called Horizon. And he was also a very good writer, and they had been childhood friends that reconnected. He always called him CC growing up. And
Didn't maybe you have the dates on this, but didn't he interview Stalin?
Orwell?
Yes.
Oh. Where?
For a magazine.
Not that I know of.
I think we talked about it on the show before. That he did an interview. Oh, we'll look at it the next break.
It would have been Bill Stalin, local roofer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're thinking of, what's his name? Who directed JFK.
Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
He blew Stalin.
No, he did that big series with Putin, remember?
Oh, yeah. No, but I feel like there was something where Orwell interviewed one of these folks.
So this is pretty crazy. So during the war, he's got new literary contacts. He's got a flat in London, Dorset Chambers. It's the time of the Dunkirk evacuation.
No shit.
And Eileen's brother Lawrence dies in France, and she's just super depressed. Orwell starts doing a wartime diary. He's unfit for any military service, and then but they say, "Will you do the Home Guard?" And he sees the Home Guard as a way to also have it be like a proletariat, like militia.
So is a Home Guard like their National Guard?
Yeah, it's a thing where it's like, guys, if fucking people start landing,
Throw rocks.
Yeah, Piccadilly Circus. Like, so he taught.
Germans aren't here to buy clothes.
He taught straight up street fighting,
Cool.
field fortifications, mortars.
Bullets in the neck and you.
He
Who here is 6'2"? Get out.
he recruits his publisher Warburg to join the unit.
No shit.
During the Battle of Britain, he would spend weekends with Warburg and this Zionist guy whose name was Tosco Fievel at Warburg's house in Berkshire.
Cool name, Tosco.
At Wallington, he worked on England Your England in London and wrote reviews for various periodicals. Visiting Eileen's family brought him face to face with the effects of the Blitz on East London. Warburg, Fievel, and Orwell planned Searchlight Books, which 11 volumes originally appeared. It was a series of essays in hardback book I think the one he did was The Lion and the Unicorn: Socialism and the English Genius.
Socialism and the English Genius.
He began to write for the American Partisan Review, which he then had some kind of like, a hookup with the New York intellectuals at the time then. Contributed to the Gollancz anthology, The Betrayal of the Left, which was written in the light of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which is the non-aggression alliance with Russia and Nazism.
And that worked out.
Yeah, George Orwell says...
You got a drink out of it.
He starts doing the broadcasts for the Eastern Service of the BBC that are going to India. He said, one could not have a better example of the moral and emotional shallowness of our time than the fact that we are now more or less pro-Stalin. That this disgusting murder is temporarily on our side, and so the purges, etc., are suddenly forgotten.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is, everybody knows, went down.
Yeah, it is the enemy of my enemy. Like, hey, the war ends up a lot differently. Without.
Yeah, and
that.
so I mean, he's going like, so he's in the BBC doing counter propaganda because the Nazis are giving the Indians propaganda.
Yeah,
right. And he said that was like sort of his first glimpse of the rigid conformity of office work. So you can see that going to 1984 as well, right? And working in the Ministry of Truth or whatever, and. He had dinner with H.G. Wells, which became an argument because Wells had taken offense at some observations he'd written about him in a Horizon article.
it was H.G. Wells who interviewed Stalin, by the way.
Oh, okay.
In 1934.
Interesting.
He said, "I'm further to the left than you are."
You said it to Stalin.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Stalin would be like, yeah, you are.
Yeah. Don't let my people hear about that.
Yeah.
David Astor at this time makes him a frequent contributor to The Observer, and The Observer and The Guardian have always been so proud to have Orwell as a writer. First article is 42. They moved to a bigger flat, and they were in Kilburn, which he said was the lower middle class ambiance that Orwell thought was London at its best. And then his mother and sister get like everybody's going to London at this time. I can't believe like it's like, dude, get the fuck to the country. I don't know what they're doing. But except that there's probably so much factory work to be done.
Yeah,
and it's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened with his sister. I think they worked like at a sheet metal factory.
Yeah.
And there's probably more anti-aircraft guns around.
Yeah, you
London.
turn the lights off at night, you're going to be fine, apparently.
Yeah.
And the V2s weren't that accurate.
So yeah, he did Voice, a literary program for Indian broadcasts, and he was worried that it wasn't starting to get enough traction. 43, his mother dies, and he tells his friend he's starting work on a new book about animals. And
Guy's like, oh, the caterpillar fucking, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, good. Doing the Lord's work, George.
Finds out that the broadcasts are not really working in India. He resigns from that post in September 43. And then he's just like keen on finishing Animal Farm.
He goes in and he's like, it's me, George Orwell, the guy on the radio. You all know me.
And one of the last things he did before quitting was, I guess, a radio adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's The Emperor's New Clothes.
Great.
And so he said that's why the words fairy tale appear on the cover of Animal Farm.
Oh.
He was like into this new format or whatever, and he was like, it says, so Animal Farm, a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Was how it premiered.
Yeah, okay.
And resigns from the Home Guard also for medical reasons. He's made assistant literary editor at Tribune. His old friend John is an assistant, and he was on the staff until early 45, 80 book reviews. He had a regular column, almost like King's Things, called As I Please. And
He's just writing about like melons and
honestly, pretty much. He'd be railing about women's fashion magazines, and
it grinds my gears.
Yeah.
all these women today.
He was going like
Tits are out.
he was going like the fakeness of the language, and how it was just all bullshit. And then he just goes,
You can't even say spaz anymore.
and then he goes, let me tell you about traffic fatalities. Like he just pivots, like it's whatever he wants to talk about. Like
Yeah.
usually broken up into 3-4 paragraphs. And so yeah, he's kind of a pundit in like the left wing. He's also a close friend of people on the right, so like Nation has him doing stuff. Horizon, The Guardian, Observer, and
So he's pretty well known at this point.
yeah. And then Animal Farm comes up.
Okay.
And Golan's, he was the one that was doing all the early shit. The socialist, maybe the source of the
Rich Anarchist.
He refuses to publish it, and I think it's like he was going like, even Homage to Catalonia, he was like, I'm not going to publish that because he thought it was too against the left. And T.S. Eliot, nope, not going to publish it.
Why?
He was in charge at Faber and Faber. I don't know at that time if it was still felt like we should not be upsetting the Soviets, because keep in mind it's 44.
Yeah.
And then he believed he was I don't know if there was any proof to it, but he believed that he was infertile, and they adopted a son, a 3-week-old boy, and named him after his father, Richard. His name was Richard Horatio Blair, and
Well, it just means he was really fucking a lot.
And
Just wasn't working.
their house, a V1 flying bomb took apart, and they weren't home, thank God. And
See, that's why you moved to London.
George Orwell would be like moving around, and like the cops would just be like, "It's the Blitz, get to the tube," and so everybody would be in the tube,
Right.
and
Keep calm.
wait it out.
Yeah.
yeah, and the cop on the street would go like, "Women and children first," and then you would, all right, now you lot, and then so he had to go through the rubble to get his book collection, which he threw into a wheelbarrow, and also the manuscript for Animal Farm. And just wheeled it off to his office.
Good deal. I mean, at least he got it.
Yeah, and then the one publishing house says they're gonna publish it, and the decision is reversed. And he finds out it was because of a personal visit to a man named Peter Smollett, who was an official at the Ministry of Information. He was later identified as a Soviet agent.
Oh, God.
Then they were in the Northeast, near County Durham. But like you're saying, dude, they were everywhere, bro.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they adopted the kid, and they get this home in Canterbury Square in Islington, and Eileen gives up her job at the Ministry of Food. She's taking care of the family. Warburg agrees to publish Animal Farm. Didn't come out till August 45. And in February 45, Orwell had been made war correspondent for The Observer. And he had been looking for the opportunity throughout the war.
Right.
And he was, his medical wouldn't let him anywhere near the action. And so then he goes to, it's the end of the war, but he goes.
Yeah.
And he goes to liberated Paris, and then he's in Cologne and Stuttgart, and there's still bodies on the floor. Never under fire. But yeah, he was like, we would hit towns the day after they fell.
It stinks.
And he had some stuff in the Manchester Evening News. He was over there, and Eileen went to the hospital for a hysterectomy and died under anesthetic.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, my God.
And he didn't even tell, or she didn't even tell him
That she was going in?
Yeah, she was like, it's just like, I don't even want to burden him.
Oh, my God.
And
well, you burned him, but that's fucking.
He was infertile anyways,
And
good thing they adopted that kid, I guess.
he returned to London to cover the 1945 general election, and Animal Farm came out 17 August 45, 26 August 46, and it was just the perfect book to come out post-war.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was like
and everybody's like, hey, we can hate Stalin now.
a worldwide success. He becomes famous in his own time for the first time, and so he just takes on more work because he's also just so distraught over Eileen.
Yeah.
And I think his sister comes and is taking care of Richard, and he's he's still doing the small circulation political magazines too. Like he's just writing, and he begins work on 1984. He's part of kind of what was considered the Shanghai Club, which was left-wing and immigrant journalists E.H. Carr, Sebastian Hafner, Isaac Deutscher, Barbara Ward, and John Kimchi, who's a friend of his from years and years past. In the year following Eileen's death, he published around 130 articles and a selection of critical essays. Remaining active in various political lobbying campaigns, he employed a housekeeper, Susan Watson, to look after his adopted son. That was it. And the visitors described the flat as bleak.
Well, he was too busy writing to do anything else. It sounds like that's a lot of articles.
He has like 4 different women to marry him. After like meeting them for an hour,
standing on his head.
Yeah.
Hey, it's different, right?
You know me.
But so David,
you like worms?
David Astor, who asked him to join the Guardian, he had family around the Scottish estates, and that's how he got to that island of Jura. And he was like, it was another thing where like, get this guy out, do a fixer-upper,
keep himself busy.
Yeah,
away from groups.
So he had several hopeless and unwelcome marriage proposals to younger women, including Celia Kerwin, who would become Arthur Kessler's sister-in-law, Anne Popham, who happened to live in the same block of flats, and Sonia Brownell, who was his friend Connolly's coterie at the Horizon office. And she eventually would marry him.
She sounds really excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had
more of a coterie
he had a
right
tubercular hemorrhage in February 46, but disguised his illness. How do you do that?
You have red handkerchiefs.
Yeah.
They don't see me cough up blood.
No, it's from the war wound.
Yeah.
The British Council asks him to do a piece on British cooking.
Oh.
Which he goes into hardcore. And then they go like, oh, this isn't cool because everybody's on rations. And they and then they issue like an apology publicly to him, being like,
right, everybody was on rations because there was like a big period of austerity after the war.
Right.
It wasn't just like war ration stuff.
Right.
It was like, we are like cutting back on public spending after the war.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
we don't have men.
And we owe the United States a lot of money because the United States like put a lot of money, like they
lended and they leased.
They lended a lot of money. And then they weren't really part of the Marshall Plan, right? Like the Marshall Plan was more of like the kind of
a real precursor to Brexit.
I think it was all U.S. Marshall Plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that the England didn't get any of that money?
Well, no, yeah, and I wonder.
Either way, I could. I'm like that's total speculation. I don't know, but I do know that there was a big period of austerity post-war.
Well, also too, they're probably. I would imagine they're scrambling to keep the vestiges of empire left, and a lot of money's going into that, to holding what they got, sort of.
Yeah, but they also they redrew the map of the Middle East. That was the end of the British Empire. Was World War II. I think it was.
Yeah.
We got to tighten the belts.
Well, they redrew the map after one, didn't they?
Aren't you?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
lost more men in World War I too.
So Britain did receive a 50-year loan with a 2% interest rate of $3.75 billion.
Yeah, from the U.S.
Yeah.
From the Marshall Plan or for war?
From the Marshall Plan.
How does that work with the other countries? Did they just get it?
There was aid distributed to 16 European nations.
Yeah.
But not loans.
It might have been.
I wonder what it would be, for Germany, Japan, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure.
You got to send us some freaky porn over the next half century.
No, that's what the nukes
shit.
did. The nukes brought that out. That's why it's all tentacles.
Yeah, they explain that to Germany though.
So yeah, he's getting sick, and he gets shut down on this thing. Marjorie dies of kidney disease. His older sister, in May, and then so he goes to this little island in Scotland, and it's there was a abandoned farmhouse and.
An abandoned farmhouse.
Yeah.
Simpler times when you just find an abandoned farmhouse.
Pack up here.
Yeah, no one's coming back.
He loved fixing it up. It was just his thing, man. And being out in the country.
Yeah.
And showing, his little boy how to shoot rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
Breed caterpillars.
They'd be catching lobsters.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, his sister talks about being sick of eating lobster in the thing. It's
It was
like,
a poor people's food for 100 years.
dude, so funny.
It's a cockroach of
Yeah,
the sea.
they used to serve it at prisons.
She's like, lobster again? I was like, is this thing being funny? Or I didn't get it.
Is
you know?
this thing being funny?
Yeah, like I was like,
Oh, the book you were reading.
yeah.
Well, much like buffalo wings are just an excuse to eat shovels of blue cheese, lobster is just an excuse
No,
to eat a lot of
the
butter.
chicken wing is inherently succulent. I will stand by the chicken wing.
And a lobster is inherently succulent.
Yes, I stand by them both.
It's just that they are sea cockroach. But they are.
Sea roach.
They had to come into style.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's $30 for a lobster roll.
Yeah, that's not so po', boy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'll be here half a week.
So yeah, Avril, the little sister, she comes up with the little Richard when they're ready, and they have
Tutti Frutti?
little Richard Orwell or
Richard Horatio.
little Richard Horatio Blair, and
Oh, good golly.
so Orwell is working on 1984 up there, and
Just an abandoned...
David Holbrook, who would later be kind of he was dating this woman Susan Watson, and
the woman that declined Orwell's proposal.
yeah, but also like the same thing. Like they liked being in that circle or
Yeah,
whatever.
they're
But,
friends.
but he was a writer and an academic.
I
And,
don't want to fuck him, but I don't mind hanging out.
and Orwell just like made him feel really unwelcome because he was a member of the Communist Party. So they fuck off. And
I bet he gave less fucks at this point in his life.
certainly, yeah. I would say after Spain, it was the gloves were off.
No, you take a bullet through the neck, I suppose.
He goes back to London in late '46 and picks up literary journalism again, and now he's known. So he's like I said, swamped, and stays in London for one of the coldest winters on record. That with such a national shortage of fuel that he burnt his furniture and his child's toys.
Oh, that's a teacher. A teaching lesson.
The
right
heavy
there.
smog in these days was also probably just absolutely brutal for him before the Clean Air Act of '56.
I mean, how many fucking people back then with just like the slightest disease and breathing?
And
all
also
that?
he was just one of these guys where like, no doctors.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the cigarettes were the doctors in those days.
Yeah, and this
Take
is
two
like,
seemed
this is
more.
like a guy too that like the doctors when he went for the throat shot in Spain, they were like, "Oh my God, you survived the ambulance and the field hospital." Like
Sure.
that's just as dangerous as getting shot.
Yeah.
So like he's had like no real bad experience to even be that guy, which all of our dads probably are.
Right.
I don't know if your dad is, but me and his definitely.
Yeah.
Wait, what is
How'd that work out?
what is that guy?
Not fucking doctors. I don't. I'm
Oh,
not going to doctors. They're just going to tell me I'm sick. Well, it's like, yeah.
You know when your dad tells you doctors don't know what they're talking about?
No, I don't. So I guess he's not one of those.
You got one of
guys.
those dads, huh?
Yeah.
Pussy.
And the wound cauterized itself. I don't know what the problem.
That's probably what he said. Is like, what I need a doctor for? The bullet sealed the hole shut.
yeah,
like,
So
what a maniac.
he's got this thing too with Gallant's from the early publishing days and Warburg now sort of arguing over who owns what of
his stuff.
the Orwell canon because it's it quickly becomes who will take it to
We all.
we all want like
Oh, I just discovered my love of this.
and so he has to establish a company and like copyright his own shit. Like he's become that famous in his own time, and it's still is gonna be messy.
Yeah.
Even though he's aware of it. Like one-on-one conversations where he said I could have 25% of the company, like shit like that happens. Where you're like, bro, you got to have another motherfucker there.
Yeah.
At least.
A notary, a lawyer,
A motherfucker.
So
Esquire.
he goes back to Jura. He makes good progress on 84. And his sister's family come out, Avril's, and he takes the kids out on the boat. And there's like this this whirlpool thing. He's like, oh, the kids will love it. And it's
No.
Yeah, it thrashes the boat. And
The kids are going to go towards the swirling maelstrom of
the-
seawater.
The kids love a good drowning. I know. I burned my son's toys last year, and
yeah. He's like, I got to take him on a crazy ride. Gotta think about Mr. Toads.
Yeah, you know how Daddy burned all your toys because it was so cold on account of my good decision?
Yeah. Well, listen to this.
You kids are gonna love this.
And so, yeah, he saves, nobody dies, but him getting that wet is not good for him either.
He's a fucking gremlin.
And, he's 47 Christmas. He's in the hospital outside Glasgow, and he's diagnosed with TB. And he gets streptomycin, early antibiotic.
Yeah.
And he is helped with payment by David Astor from the Observer Guardian. And, it was marginally successful. He finishes, he goes back to Jura, finishes the manuscript for 1984. And he goes to another place for treatment. And they were like, "Oh, fuck, you look like shit, dude." And at first people were worried about how much all this shit would cost, but now like the money's starting to come in, so he's doing okay. And he's writing his friends, and his friend Celia Kerwin, who was one of the people he had, made advances towards, she had started working for the Information Research Department. And that's basically a precursor to like an MI5-ish kind of thing or whatever. Sort of their version of the CIA.
Yes.
And they want to do anti-communist propaganda. And Orwell gave her a list of people.
Yeah.
Which didn't come out until 2003.
Right.
And the Guardian, I remember being like, just having left there, and the Guardian and Observer being like, what the fuck?
But he laid it out for you in all of his books that everybody fucking gives in at the end.
Yeah, but it was a thing, too, where people were going like, even this is a thing that's being taken out of context, because people would take things out of context, or they cherry pick. And he was just going like, if you're going to do counterinsurgency operations, just steer clear of these people.
Right.
I feel like these people would not be good. Not like, here's a blacklist of lives to destroy.
Right.
So is that your theory, or
That was what a source said. Yes.
Okay.
So that source later clarified that by saying, here's a list of people to not fuck with.
Yes, people that he believed through his circles.
That's interesting.
Yes, it is.
Well, then that changes the game.
That does
John.
change
That changes the whole
much, yes.
fucking situation, John.
Would you at all be interested in knowing?
Who's on it?
Yeah.
Well, if
Orson
I'm on
Welles.
it, yes,
Huh?
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles is on it.
yes.
Dude, I couldn't fucking believe it. I was like, we got H.G. Wells, we got Orson Welles, and we
George
got George
Orwell.
Orson Welles was
keeping the family, I guess.
I think he was on the blacklist, but it didn't really matter at that point.
Yeah, he was fucking log jamming.
Getting lobsters from Orwell's scraps.
And was he? Oh, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that in the Patreon.
Yeah.
Where Orson Welles stays.
I had no idea at all. But it was Katharine Hepburn,
Orson Welles.
John Steinbeck,
Yes.
Grapes of Wrath.
Yes.
an author he enjoyed.
Yeah.
Cecil Day Lewis.
That I assume Daniel's father.
That's correct.
No shit.
He was just doing that for a role, though.
Yeah.
He went back in time and really.
But yeah, fucking
Cecil Day Lewis sounds so silly.
Cecil, I guess.
Yeah, so I know, but it just sounds silly already knowing his son with the Daniel Day Lewis.
Well, right.
Which flows out the tongue much better.
And so they made the IRD also put Animal Farm. They weaponized Animal Farm into cartoon strips.
Yeah.
Animal Farm is the first feature-length animated film made in the UK.
Wow.
No yeah, I did know that. Did I know
Fucking hell.
that from like? Do I think we watched it in 7th grade or 8th or 9th grade? We watched it
In your English animation class?
No, history class.
Oh, okay.
It was social studies, or one of those history classes.
Social study, yeah, one of those, yeah. Like, what the fuck is social
The
studies?
IRD and the CIA both looked to Orwell to be like, we need to get like anti-communist propaganda out here
now,
hardcore, and we basically like, they do in 1984 one where I think Winston's like ends up being down with Big Brother. Like it totally bastardizes the novel. But they wanted like happier endings for American audiences or whatever. But it was also
Saps.
It was a thing of like, yeah, we gotta fucking get this. Gotta get this out there. And
Yeah, it's either cartoon strips or bombs. So
and he was apparently yeah, it's just, it's so funny because the whole time he's attacking the malaise and the hypocrisy and the silliness and he would do columns about just tea time and like the things and like tinned fish and things that he despised.
Tinned fish.
Yeah, just like
Fish is great.
yeah, sure. We're not gonna start a fight over that. But like,
you're out there in the Spanish Civil War, you pull out some tin fish, it's a ceasefire, pal.
Maybe.
well, that's the thing is that like he perfectly encapsulates. It was democracy is the worst form of government except for
all others.
which is who Churchill.
Yeah, it's Churchill.
Yeah.
So it's like he's just so of that generation perfectly, but had been so disillusioned by his sort of revolutionary past that at the end of it all he goes like, well, all I know is this country's full of shit, but I do like England.
Yeah, and what side are you fighting for, or what's your cause? Decency, common decency. So
Right.
it's this or Stalinist Russian gulags and
Yeah.
them getting the bomb.
And it's easy to see how after a world war and then England's austerity, what governmental ideology are you going to root for after a world war and then your country's in austerity? And it's like, well, is the democracy of England working? Well, there's still like blacklisting people. Is that... which one of these systems actually works?
I would imagine for him was the one with little to no camps.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah, but here's the thing too, and this is a question for better historians than we are. But it's the thing where, like, my dad was always adamant. He goes like, the U.S. came in at the fucking tail end of that thing. The Brits took on the far bigger brunt of the fighting. Obviously, the Soviets too. Once it turns that way, but it's just like a thing where you go like, it must have been hard for them to be like, so we don't keep any of this as like an imperial power, and the States goes no,
Right,
and neither do we, and actually, we need to pay to fix it all. But it's just like a thing where you go like, after the First World War, you go like, that's the way to do it, man.
Yeah, otherwise they come back again.
Yeah, it's like it's gonna be another fucking regroup.
Yeah,
and
and don't let them have a fucking military for 75 years.
Right. So the only one that actually did it was the Soviets.
The only ones that
kept taking territory.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what was...
I guess we both kind of did in Germany, but that was us ostensibly being like...
You mean like Berlin? What, East Berlin, West Berlin?
Yeah. East and West Germany.
Yeah. You gotta... If you break it, you buy it,
Europe.
Europe.
Right.
Otherwise, like, they're just gonna come back and have a boogeyman again.
Right.
But the U.S. had... This was a great impetus for the U.S. to, tap their hitherto before untapped resources.
Yeah. And the thing was that the States were just going like, listen, we're not telling you who to elect or anything. We're just here. That's what they did it.
That right there? Oh, that's just the bomb.
No, but like...
But anyways...
No, I'm saying like the occupying troops. So like... Which, I mean... They weren't occupying because it's just like, we have a base here.
Yeah.
But they also would go out sometimes and like fuck with the locals and like, there would have to be some public admonishment of like...
Yeah, and that's been the case ever since. But, they... there was... When it was Rome, it was Pax Romana. And after World War II, is Pax Americana. And it was just like, all right, this is the New World Order. It's us or the other guy.
Right.
England kind of tapped out its resources. It wasn't so much about having a navy anymore. It was about having an air force.
Right, sure.
I mean, the U.S. Navy is the second biggest air force in the world.
Yes.
Next to the U.S. Air Force.
Crazy.
So it's that World War I saw the popularization of air warfare, but World War II showed that the game has changed, and
this is
no
the
other
future.
country on Earth has this kind of firepower except Germans who had jets, but we just had a lot more shit.
Yes.
Right.
We had more resources to tap
And
into.
we were out of the war for long enough for...
To spool up
Yeah.
and to see how's this going to shake out. But we kind of already had our favorites. I mean, the American presence on the continent, they did allow, or we forced ourselves on all these other countries with NATO and all this stuff and having our bases there, but they did get a free police force or a free military that they don't have to spend their own money on.
Yes,
that they
right.
can then spend on things like healthcare.
Yes, right.
And social services, whereas our money goes to that.
Yeah, and we kind of hope, I guess, that our end of the deal is that they do more business with American corporations.
Yes, they do, and they pay back their loans, and
Right.
they also toe the line when it comes to international politics.
No,
To a point.
To a point.
To a point. I mean,
But-
they're not going to vote with Israel against Palestine.
No, not at the UN.
No.
But they when it comes to the Iraq War or international drug policy, they do.
In the case of the Iraq War, who signed on?
England.
England.
Spain, I think.
Spain,
too.
England, coalition of the willing. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't all NATO countries.
Spain fucking reversed it immediately because they got those train bombs. Remember?
That's right.
They tried to blame it on ETA.
They're like, nah, this is not ETA, bro.
Yeah, they were like ETA phones in warnings.
Yeah.
This is fucking. And then there was like.
And then the train bombing in England too, but England didn't pull out because they're in the pocket of the U.S. But
Well, also Blair went headlong into the 20-minute claims of missiles, all that bullshit. He went just as far as Bush in the claim.
yeah,
There's 2 guys in Belgium that joined too. So there's a lot of
Yeah. Coalition of the willing.
yeah.
Yeah. Guys that will get in our planes.
guys that won't get out of the plane. After we shove them in there.
Stowaways. But yeah, so 1984 comes out, critical acclaim immediately. It's already a thing. A million periodicals, and then who knows what the money was from doing the intelligence work
Yeah.
or selling those rights to get whatever. But I know that there was some debate with he's basically dying when that woman finally marries him that he flirted with three years before, which is not the greatest look.
For either of them?
Well, especially for her, because he's just in a bed with a typewriter.
Yeah, there's not a lot of good looks left for him.
all the the medical treatment, all the sanatoriums, all that stuff, always a typewriter. He had a fucking was it Remington?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
It was. It was always just fucking every time he was sick, just kept writing.
Smith Corona.
But I think he was just like. I think Sonia is her name, Brownall. She was the inspiration for Julia in 1984, and I don't know if he was thinking that it would be, a suitable mom for Richard Horatio after he was gone, but Avril and her husband ended up taking Richard Horatio anyway, and I think Richard ended up being running the Orwell Society, hopefully getting just very rich in the ensuing years off his dad's stuff, with these other couple of publisher dudes.
Apple Macintosh commercials.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he just mid 49 Sonia Brownell, and they announced their engagement in September, shortly before he was at the University College Hospital in London. She took charge of his affairs and was attending him diligently in hospital, it was said. In September 49, he invited his accountant, Harrison, to visit him in hospital, and Harrison claimed that Orwell then asked him to become director of GOP Limited, his company. George Orwell, whatever. And there was no independent witness. The wedding took place in a hospital room in October 49.
Christ.
David Astor is best man.
That should be you.
And he was visited by all these friends, and His plans to go to the Swiss Alps were, delayed.
Unrealized.
Yeah.
Neutralized.
And further meetings with Harrison, his accountant, and Mr. and Mrs. Blair were confirmed as directors of the company, at which Harrison claimed that the service agreement was executed, giving copyright to the company. His health was in decline again by Christmas. On the evening of January 20th, 1950, a friend visited Orwell and found him asleep. Jack Harrison visited later and claimed Orwell gave him 25% of the company.
Yeah, very good.
I saw him right before he died.
Early on the morning of 21st of January, an artery burst in Orwell's lungs, killing him age 46.
46. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
46.
He had requested to be buried in accordance with the Anglican rite in the graveyard of the closest church to wherever he happened to die.
Huh.
And his thing, here lies Eric Arthur Blair, born 1903, died 1950.
You would never fucking know.
Dude.
That's it.
Wow, that's you'd never fucking There's people walk by that now. They have no fucking.
And I think it was because of the war. There was nothing nearby that could take it. So David Astor was like, "All right, my church closest to me," and
40 prolific, 46. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So they had to fight over some of the stuff with the money. Blah blah blah. Not interesting. So yeah, he had the embedded journalism kind of legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit of a little Gonzo, early Gonzo.
Yeah. The essays, the argumentative streak within him when he's appealing very much still lived on to the point where, it became kind of the foundation of the columns in The Guardian and Observer to this day, where there's people of, very different political stripes arguing very effectively in a way that they mean it.
Yeah.
It's personal
In good
belief.
faith, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's the really funny stuff of the way he is used by the left and the right.
Oh, yeah.
And
With the thought police.
well, the thought police and
Well, they're coming to your town. They're gonna...
so let's take the right side first.
Okay.
An unperson, someone that has fallen out of favor.
Yeah.
The canceled person is now an unperson, right? Or it could be in 1984. It's also somebody that's like disappeared, but they're actually an unperson,
Right.
But it's like even if they're not, thought police, groupthink,
Newspeak.
newspeak. Well, newspeak affects everyone, right?
Yeah.
But
So does groupthink.
yes.
The names of these departments, right? Like the Ministry of Truth is really the Ministry of Propaganda. Like the defense after World War II, the United States had the War Department, and then afterwards it became the Department of Defense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is very 1984.
Yes.
With the Ministry of Truth and Love, or what is it, the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Love, all these ministries that have the name
Of the opposite.
of the very
Right,
opposite
right.
thing that they are perpetrating.
Well, the best defense is starting wars in other countries.
That's right.
This is the conclusion on Dickens. Just
Wait, his conclusion on Dickens?
in the 1940 essay.
Okay.
When one reads any strongly individual piece of writing, one has the impression of seeing a face somewhere behind the page. It is not necessarily the actual face of the writer. I feel this very strongly with Swift, with Defoe, with Fielding, Stendhal, Thackeray, Flaubert, though in several cases I do not know what these people look like, and I do not want to know. What one sees is the face that the writer ought to have. Well, in the case of Dickens, I see a face that is not quite the face of Dickens' photographs, though it resembles it. It is the face of a man of about 40, with a small beard and a high color. He is laughing, with a touch of anger in his laughter, but no triumph, no malignity. It is the face of a man who is always fighting against something, but who fights in the open and is not frightened. The face of a man who is generously angry. In other words, of a 19th century liberal, of free intelligence, a type hated with equal hatred by all of the smelly little orthodoxies which are now contending for our souls.
That's fantastic.
And that's the thing, like, the little orthodoxies, not the common decency.
Right.
Is
The factions.
You see it, you see it becoming the thing of like, oh, well, I'm this branch of Trotskyist, anarcho, syndicalist, and you're like, well, that ain't gonna work.
Yeah, I'm an anarcho-capitalist with
Right.
slight syndicalist tendencies. Like, Okay, how many God, labels. Fucking labels, dude.
The laughter with anger, he paints such a fantastic picture there. I mean, because,
it's beautiful.
Because
Yeah.
that laughter, it's not a cynical laughter.
Generous
It's-
anger.
but also the absurdity. You know,
Can you believe this shit?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing? Yeah. This is somebody talks about the manipulation of him during McCarthy era. He goes, if the book in itself, Animal Farm, had left any doubt of the matter, Orwell dispelled it in his essay, Why I Write. Every line of serious work that I've written since 1936 has been written directly or indirectly against totalitarianism, ... And this guy says, ... The politics of ellipses. For democratic socialism is vaporized. You know? He goes, because the real quote is, I fought against totalitarianism and I fought for democratic socialism as I know it. But it's just against totalitarianism is... And you're leaving out the democratic socialism because this is the McCarthy era.
Right.
But, you know, maybe the democratic socialists would leave out the as I know it part.
Right. Yeah. I think possibly the most important thing is when we talk about just stuff on the left, which is there's nothing more Orwellian than Donald Trump. Stop the steal. Yeah.
The emperor's new clothes.
Stop the steal. Pelosi said it forever ago. She goes, guess what? He says I'm scared. He's scared. She's like, all he does is project, and it's been this way for years. And
But it's the Republican Party. It's not even just Donald Trump. He just fit perfectly. Into that mantle.
Especially him.
Yes, but that's what I mean. He fit perfectly onto that. mantle.
But the Republican Party never went so far as to say like stop the steal. Joe Biden's stealing the election.
They're saying that. They're saying that now.
They only did it because he did it first.
Yeah. He gave them license to do what they always wanted to do.
Yes.
Because he was like the perfect avatar of...
No, I don't even think they really want to go along with it. They just didn't want to get... They didn't want to get primaried by Trump people.
But now they're going along with it.
They still don't want to get primaried by Trump people.
But that's the Republican
All right,
Party.
but let's not get into semantics. Let me get on with the whole thing.
Okay.
They're like Trump. They didn't try anything like, hey, Hillary Clinton didn't win the election before this.
No, but they did, steal Florida.
Sure.
Yeah. The Benghazi hearings to reduce her numbers.
Right, yeah. No, there's been underhanded things. This went a different way where it goes like, okay.
Straight up Orwellian lying to your face.
Yes, when we bring on the fake news articles, he just says...
It's fake news.
And we're talking about real fake news articles dispelled from Russia.
Yeah.
That got overshadowed by Trump saying a whole real news network is fake news.
Yes.
That got overshadowed. Like, that is Orwellian.
Yes.
That's real Orwellianism, where you go like, just misdirects and deliver, like, and people have mischaracterized it as weaponizing the truth, and I go like, no, the truth is inherently a weapon.
Yeah.
He's weaponized lies.
Yes.
That was what he weaponized.
Yeah, shamelessness allows you to weaponize anything you want.
Yes, the truth is its own weapon, that you can use in different ways if you skew it, but the truth is always the truth.
Yeah.
Stop the steal. It was the continuation of what Pelosi said. It's like, do you think he's saying we're stealing? He's stealing.
Yeah.
He's the one with emails talking about fake electors.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing more Orwellian. Like, people don't know what the truth is anymore.
Yeah.
They don't know at all.
And they just they don't want to. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene said, there's nothing you can say or show me that won't change my mind that it was Antifa who did January 6th. On the same day that Trump said January 6th was fake. On the same day that they have a banner at CPAC that says we're all domestic terrorists. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Pick one.
Pick one.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing as what Taby said about 9/11 conspiracy. It's like, pick one, like narrow it down. Like it's like the towers were never there to begin with. It's like it was
drones.
It was a controlled explosion. The whole thing was a hologram. Blah blah, blah, like all this shit. You're like, suck my dick, all you idiots.
No, they're probably terrible at sucking.
But
selfish.
So in so much as that,
Thank you.
I think one of the most important things is just the stuff about language. Mm-hmm. And so he wrote Politics in the English Language, 1946. The importance Every writer still gets this, like at The Guardian. Like, it's like the first thing they're handed. And it's George Orwell's things where he goes, number 1, never use a metaphor. Simile or other figure of speech which you are used to seeing in print. 2, never use a long word where a short one will do. 3, if it's possible to cut a word out, always cut it out. 4, never use the passive where you can use the active. 5, never use a foreign phrase, a scientific word, or a jargon word if you can think of an everyday English equivalent. 6, break any of these rules sooner than say anything outright barbarous. So, you know...
Barbarous.
Barbarous, yeah, sorry. Robert McCrum, a literary editor at the Observer, said, even now it's quoted in our style book. His criticism of slovenly language is still taken very seriously. Every new recruit, David Astor gave a copy of it too. And that's very much Noam Chomsky school too, is like, if you're not trying to sound like one of the people, you're trying to get something over on them.
Yes.
And he said something about basic language where he goes, as is taught in schools. He goes,
Chomsky?
No, Orwell, where he said, it's just the, you know, if you can say in basic language, if you can say something meaningless, it has to be shown that it is meaningless. And he goes, it's no wonder that academics and politicians hate it. You know, basically, like, it's like they just want language where they can get around shit.
Right.
Like, you know, like you can't tell the truth.
Right.
Because it's, you know, and which is funny too, because he's also saying with Newspeak that it can get so simple that it's, you know, the thought crime is eradicated.
Yeah.
If you take, you know.
Well, the gun just went off. No one shot it.
No, right. Yeah. A glass broke.
Yeah.
Former roommate talk.
Glass broke.
Passive speak.
But yeah, so yeah, I didn't really dive into his life before. He's a guy, like I said, I had read everything he had ever written. I do think it's fascinating, you know, how he goes around and, you know, is like a neurotic guy and tries to find himself. And then he's just thrust into this, you know, 20th century fucking calamity. And I believe he may have coined Cold War.
No shit.
Even before Nagasaki.
Huh.
Talking about an essay called You and the Atom Bomb. And he was saying, like, it could, you know, go to a thing where we just, like, eradicate civilizations, or it could just leave us in a permanent state of a Cold War.
The sword of Damocles hanging above your head, the constant threat.
Which, of course, is what ended up happening.
Yeah.
And by then, he's already so famous, too, that you go, like...
Shit. What else did he get right?
Like, yeah, like, and the left and the right still both taking from him.
Yeah, it's the cherry picking of, you know, the deified figure.
But also, where would he fall even when he died? What is he? Democratic Socialist, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, you know, like informing on other fucking people. Like, God, like. But it's a thing too, where like, yeah, like the shit hit the fan, and it's like, well, it was all good and fun in Spain, and now the shit hit the fan, and like
now I'm back home, and I'm too close to home.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about that fishing in Orwell River, and I'm going like, what way of life is going to change, and what, you know, and it's like immediately him and his wife, it was like government offices, probably unthinkable to them a couple of years before,
Yeah, and
then it just became a thing where you're like, oh fuck, we're like completely outmatched here by these, you know what I mean? Like, we're not for this.
We are
but
against
we're not
that.
We're not like, or even like our friends think like, oh, maybe this is good, you know, like advancing communism. They're going like, ooh, no, it is not. You know, that is total brutal totalitarianism, like by another name.
Yeah.
And also like he had the thing very out front very fast of Lenin being like, well, my wife wants her, like the people want my wife to have a fur coat.
All right.
That sort of shit.
Right.
Like, it's not Comrade Lenin. It's fucking like you're the boss.
Yeah.
You know, so that's shown in Animal Farm like immediately so well. But it's funny, I'm thinking like for a minute even that was taboo to put out.
You want to upset the apple cart.
Yeah.
Until you.
And then it was like suddenly it was like imminently like we need
go.
We need animated cartoon strips in the paper, like, because they probably were like you were saying because of the austerity, especially being like, could we fucking lose England to either of these ideologies still.
Right. But then, in the response to that, like, now you're banning people from making movies.
What do you mean?
Like the blacklist in the United States, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh no, we can't have the communists. They're gonna like make lists of people that they don't like.
So let's make a list.
Let's make a list of the people that are gonna make the lists. We got to get ahead of.
Well, they were just all so scared, because a lot of those people saw firsthand, the terror and the carnage over there. That like I understand why so many people were scared of communism.
Yeah. Well, especially under Stalin, dude.
Yes, and when I say communism, I mean Stalinist.
Yes,
Stalinist Russia.
Yes.
But just the hypocrisy coming back of doing,
Especially when we have the bomb and we're the only ones that dropped it.
Yeah.
But they got it very soon. They got it by what,
49?
49, 51. They had and that great Dan Carlin episode about
should we give it to them?
Yeah, should we give it to them
Right.
or should we nuke them off the face of the earth
Right.
before they get it?
Yeah.
If you talk to the generals, you know which one.
And then it was the thing of like, should we give it to the world?
Yeah.
Like, should everybody be able to have it? Like, so we all keep each other in check.
Right. And that's kind of what happened to a degree is that like, kids build nuclear reactors in their fucking basement.
Yeah.
And it is this kind of the Cold War that Orwell talked about of like, well, now everybody's got to, it's a Mexican standoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except if you're
Except
Iran
they don't have
or except if it's Iran or, one of the few countries that we don't let have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The funniest thing to me is like the one that's speculative is like short range. Like, I just want to do a little.
Yeah,
Tactical nuke stuff?
I want to do a little nuke.
Yeah, tactical nukes.
I just want to do a little. I didn't do the little one.
Yeah.
I didn't do the bomb like Nagasaki. you
Jesus.
sickos. I just bobbed, Linetsk or whatever.
Yeah.
Come on.
I hate it.
It's tactical.
It's a
Got a
little
tasty
one.
freeze.
Yeah.
It's tactical. It's tasteful. Tasteful. Tactical. Tasteful. It's coincidence.
Yeah. But yeah, what did you guys think?
Pretty crazy. I had no idea that
it's
he
so
died so young.
Yeah.
And his penchant for farm work totally makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, for real.
He knew.
Yeah.
He knew.
It's like geese.
And I mean,
Caterpillars.
real affection for it too. Like I said, like just the diary entries, like they just were like,
Man, the fucking rabbit's the shit.
Oh, fucking! I gotta
I
kill.
love this
Shoot
rabbit.
the rabbits.
Man.
talking about like after he sold the place where he had with Sonia in Wallingford or whatever. It was like he was like I went back later and he's like just seeing how big the rose bush that he planted had gotten and like
Oh, that's nice.
loved shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like it was the thing where like he had some stuff too where he talked about like England would be so great if he didn't have all this do not enter, do not trespass, stay off this grass, all that stuff. And he had this brilliant takedown and he goes, but then it wouldn't be England, would it? Like, so it was like this like love-hate thing he has with England that's so strong.
Well, they have that right of walking or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Where you just like you're not allowed to stop people from walking through fields.
Oh, is that true?
I believe so.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, like,
I'm walking here.
Yeah.
he does a lot of like the stay off the grass, all that shit.
You gotta stay off the grass, but you gotta mind the gap.
Private, like he was saying, I think it, like a thing about cricket where he goes like, cricket's thought to be a snobby thing, but he goes to play a game you got to get like 25 people involved, so it's inherently social. He's like the real snob game is golf, of course, where there's a
Giant field and only
a
two
giant
people
field.
play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
ironically, golf was invented by fucking sheep herders,
yeah,
and it becomes like the most snobbish game.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
but they're like hitting each other islands and shit. Like it'd be,
They were hitting rocks,
it'd be amazing.
Yeah,
It's a pretty good time hitting rocks around,
dude,
Batting a rock around.
Oh my god.
it's best.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that he was a really rough and tumble guy, really ready to fucking get shot,
Shot in the neck.
Yeah. He tried to get himself arrested one time for drunken and disorderly behavior because he felt it was important to go to jail, like Jamie Gillis said.
What a privilege.
And it was a thing where he probably saw like the mustache and like just he's a big old guy and they probably maybe heard some accent or something and they were like, this guy doesn't belong in the clink.
Oh,
You
he's a
wouldn't do-
chef.
You wouldn't do well here, pal.
But yeah, he was like it was Gonzo in that way of he was doing it for the essay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really, really admire him. I still think he's right about most things. Which is
He lived a lot of it, so
also like just don't have an ideology. Just be like understand right and wrong.
yeah. It's a good show. Good show, John. Very good.
Thank you, buddy.
Very nice, John.
You like that sort of shit, man? Is that okay with you?
Dot.
I brought up French shit.
Oh no, de rigueur.
Aldous Huxley.
Yeah.
Nelly Limousine.
Nelly Limousine.
Anything with that?
I believe that is a song.
Nelly Limousine.
No, it's a song Limousine by Nelly.
Oh, yeah. All right, fellas. I love you.
Love you.
too.
Aaron, we're going to miss you while you're gone.
I hope so.
Yeah,
of
no.
course.
I'll miss you guys.
Yeah.
I guess.
Dot.
I think.
Matt, I love you
As I
too,
see
buddy.
it. Love you too, John.
Let's say goodnight. I'm John Fahey.
I'm Aaron Pita.
Matt Brousseau.
Good night, everybody. We love you.
Good night.
Starburns Audio.